Greetings there, fellow maker. Welcome to the studio. You got Bill today, and we have a fun special project for a really cool person. You know our pal Joel, the 3D printing nerd? Well, he just started a project with Felicia Day. Actually, his video is already out. He made some armor for Felicia, and it's from the show Supernatural. She plays a character, Charlie Bradbury. The episode LARP and the Real Girl, she's got on some armor and a tabard. So Joel's got the armor covered, and I've been assigned the tabard, which is why I have all this fabric here. A tabard's a great beginner sewing project if you're just getting started. It's fairly simple, and we're gonna make our pattern from scratch. So let's get some paper and get to work. I've got a couple of screenshots from the show of the tabard. It's fairly simple. We are gonna have to make it in different colored panels. That'll make it a little more challenging. For the pattern, it's basically a sleeveless t-shirt. So the sides, I think, are just straight up and down. And then the shoulders are tipped up. There's a neck cutout and there's arm cutouts. They're not too pronounced though. That's basically the shape for the front and the back. We just have to split it into panels. That's like down at the waist. It's pretty low. Now I got some measurements from Felicia, like how long this thing needs to be. I got waist and hip and bust measurements, so I know how wide it has to be. And that should be enough to get us pretty much started. For the shapes like the neck here, I have a real shirt. I borrowed one of Brittany's shirts so that we can just copy the neck hole on that. So I'm going to figure out the specific dimensions right here in small scale and then draw it big scale so we can have a full-size pattern. All right, we've got our pattern dimensions figured out. Now I'm just drawing it full scale over here. It's a pretty wide neck hole, and that's important for getting our actor's head through there. So that's the back of it, and then I'll also trace the front of it, which connects to the same spot up here. The front comes down lower, so we'll need to basically cut these, use this pattern twice to get both sides of it. Rear. That's pretty good for the neck hole. So for the armholes then, it's probably going to be bigger than the armhole on a t-shirt, just a little bit bigger. We can't actually see where it connects, but if it's at least as big as a t-shirt armhole, then we should be in pretty good shape. So that's like down to here. And then the shoulder, you can see there's like an angle here. We're going to copy that too. There we go. And then the armhole can just be a gentle arc here. It doesn't need to be a huge opening. Of course, since it's a symmetrical pattern, we're just going to do half of it. Got everything figured out, so I'm going to do it in marker, and then we can cut it out, and it'll cut out both sides for us. Before I do any cutting out of my pattern, I need to add seam allowance. I think I'll just add a 1/2 inch. That's why I have this wacky ruler here. The seam allowance is basically the extra bit of material on a seam that you sew through. If we cut it out right along the edge, that edge is what we want to be the edge of the garment. And there wouldn't be any meat left to connect it. Now I'm not going to put a seam allowance around the neck. That's going to get some bias tape put around it, so that should be fine. But this will get hemmed, so we need a material we can fold over. And then the edges where they're going to get sewed together, so those will get a seam allowance. And then I have to cut all these panels apart and retrace them and add a seam allowance to them. Very exciting. Now that I have my extra 1/2 inch added, we can cut it out. All right, we've got our pattern started. I need to cut out the lining, the inside of it first, because this is going to get cut apart for all our panels. I'm doing red for the inside. You can't actually see the inside, but I have a ton of red, so I'm going to use that. And I have to cut out two, the front and the back. I guess I'll just cut this a little big. I'm going to cut this piece a little big and then iron it because it's a little wrinkly. That's not safe. There we go. We need two panels like this. Yeah. Okay, and then the best sewing weights obviously are 1, 2, 3 blocks. Sure, that's how Yaya Han does it. I have this chalk tool for doing the outline. It's awesome. It also clicks when you run it. How are we looking? Pretty good. There, we have a nice faint line there for cutting it out. Now we can just follow our lines, cut this piece out. This is the back of the lining. I'll have to cut out a front with a lower neck hole. For the front of the lining, I'm cutting this neck hole out. You can see I've added some registration marks right there so that I can put this neck hole back when I needed to cut out some of the other parts. So we are saving this smiley face. Or it's a mustache. Now that I've got my lining pieces cut out, I can start dissecting my pattern. But I will need to add a seam allowance to this. I think I'll just use some tape. This tape will become my seam allowance. I'm gonna fold it over on itself and then trim it so it's really nice and sharp. There was just a little bit to trim off there, and I got pretty much a 1/2 inch seam allowance there. Now I can cut this. These two panels come apart, and I'm only doing half. I should mark, this is the top. This is the middle. This is the side. This is the bottom. Since this is pretty much just a square. So this panel gets another seam added up here. There we go. We'll trim that off with the correct metal ruler. There we go. That's our panel patterns ready to go. Got one of these panels done. I need another one, but this one we need to add our neck hole back into. Also, there should be a little bit of an allowance there. We'll just add that. There we go. There we go. Front and back. There we go. That is all of our red panels. Now it's time to do the exact same thing with our tan fabric. There we go. All of our pieces are cut out. We have our lining, we have all our panels. Now I can start clipping them together. Got these clippy-doos here. And we can start sewing, starting by attaching all these panels. Doing just a quick test here with some scraps of fabric. These lines here let us know how far we need to go for our seam allowance. We did 1/2 inch or 4/8. So we put it on there, and then as long as I run this along this line right here, it should work great. Oh, that is the wrong stitch. Okay. A, B. B? Do I want B? Yeah, that's better. That seems like really short stitches. I can probably make them longer. There we go. That looks good to me. Now I can just pre-attach these panels with these clips. Oh, get under there. There we go. And now these two can become one. Got one of our older sewing machines here. This is a Janome HD 1000. It's nice having multiple sewing machines. You can have them set up different ways. We've got a Sailrite we worked with a few months ago. You probably saw that. This is one we've had for like 10 years. And it's a real champ, especially on very normal fabric type projects like this, as opposed to the crazy pants stuff you can do on a Sailrite. One down, about 30 to go. Got these side panels put together. I want to get the seams to lay flat though. So we're gonna iron these flat before we attach these to the other side. There we go. Very nice. Let's do them all like that. Everyone behave. So the next step when making your tabard at home is to realize you put one of these panels on backwards. You have to seam rip it and sew it back on in the other direction. Did you know this is how you're supposed to use a seam ripper? Put this ball part inside it and then just run it down the seam. Took me like 30 years of using a seam ripper to figure that one out. There we go. This goes like that. Awesome. Great. Now that I've correctly rearranged my panels, we can put the sides together. So I've got the two opposing sides here. I'm trying to make like this junction here line up so that our panels are all nice and tidy. And there we go. Two panels are now one. Or four anyway. Four are now one.
Ooh.
Yeah, that like lined up perfectly there. I like it. This is actually the back.
You have a cape.
All right, with that seam stitched, we can flatten it out now. Got the front and back panels now ready to attach at the shoulder. This should be pretty straightforward. Hard to goof up. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. I've actually seam ripped this thing a couple of times off camera, if I'm honest. After a test fit, we realized the neck hole's a little small, so I'm going to carefully enlarge it, doing different cuts for the front and back. So we'll do the back first, which goes pretty much just like this. This will all get covered with some bias tape, so it doesn't have to be pretty, but it does need to be big enough for a head to fit. Okay, I've got the shoulders put together on the lining as well as the outer part. And they're going to go face to face. I got to make sure I get the front and back think look just like that. And then I'm just going to sew around the edge of it. Just sort of seal it all in, and then we'll use the neck hole to turn it right side out. I think it's good. I've also thought that a couple of times in the past on this project. There we go, all the way around. This is when I found out my bobbin probably ran out a while ago. It did not. All right. Now we turn it inside out and cross our fingers. Or right side out anyway. Boop. All right, everything's right side out and looking fine. We'll just flatten everything here with the iron. There we go. Got everything ironed. There we go. Let's see how things are looking. That looks pretty great. The sides are going to come together with grommets and string. Last bit of sewing you have will be around the neck, and I've got a strip of this red fabric for that. We'll make this into some bias tape. Starting by just folding this thing in half. Now we'll take each side and fold them over like that. Just fold in one half. Now we do the other side. Now I fold it all back together to give us a nice clean piece we can sneak around the neck there. So you can see now how the ends get folded in like that, so that when it goes around that fabric, everything's captured and pretty. That goes right over like that. And we go around. Having a mannequin for this is so helpful. Got everything pinned down, so now we can very carefully load it into the machine. Steady as she goes. That should be the neck all sorted. How did we do? It's not going to fall off anywhere. I think we're good. I think we're good. Let's throw it on our mannequin buddy. Hey, hey, that looks pretty great right there. I am rather pleased. All right, we got to add some grommets on the side. I think that's the last step. You can see in this shot there, these grommets with some string holding the side together. So that's what we're going to punch next. I've got a ruler here so I can figure out where those holes are going to go. I'm thinking there. Like that. There we go. And we'll punch it, and then I've got these brass grommets for that. Now we punch some holes. This is just a leather punch. It works on all kinds of stuff. Now I'm going to put these grommets through just one side, not both sides. These things are awesome. You just slip that through, put this little tool behind it, put this tool on top of it, and smash it with a hammer. Isn't that pretty? Very nice. To stitch this up, I have some cord, some silky cord from like Joann's or something. And it's just gonna go through all our eyelets here. Suddenly don't realize have no idea what I'm doing. Things like that. Nice pretty bow. There we go. That can be tightened and loosened as needed. There we go. A quick one-day build, a little longer than it had to be, what with all the seam ripping. We didn't even film it all because it was just too depressing. But we got there. We got there and it looks awesome. I just hope it fits perfectly. And I cannot wait to see how this looks together with the stuff that Joel made, including the emblem. There's a little moon emblem thing that's going to go right here. Joel's 3D printing that. That'll get added later. That wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks to Joel for connecting us with Felicia. Thanks, Felicia, for reaching out. This was a really fun project. We appreciate having you here in the shop. A special thanks goes out to the members of our Extra Credit Club for the financial support. They keep the lights on around here, and we couldn't do it without you. You can join right on Patreon or here on YouTube memberships. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next build.